So back in 1998, a lot of things happened in my personal life. One of those was actually getting banned from a mall. And, well, that story is intertwined with the story of me and a Sega Saturn. You see, there used to be in St. Charles Mall in Waldorf, Maryland, was my mall hangout spot. There used to be a GameStop. Actually, I think it still was Funcoland at that point, and a Babbage's on pretty much a kitty corner from each other, which was kind of an odd placement now that I look back on it. But Babbage's used to pay cash for games, while GameStop or Funcoland would only do credit at the time. And Babbage's had a set $1 for NES games, up to $3 for Super Nintendo, and up to $3 for Sega Genesis. But of course, if it was a rare game or worth a whole lot, the number would actually go above that $1 or $3. But if you remember me saying this, I know it was Funcoland back then, actually. Used to be able to get some really cheap games at Funcoland. At the time, I believe the Super Mario Duck Hunt combo cartridge for the NES was a whopping 8 cents. You see where I'm going with this. So I kind of figured out how to use the two stores against each other. I went in with about $20 that day. I bought about $20 worth of games at GameStop. Made sure there were no like duplicates, no extras, and went over to Babbage's and sold them. Now, initially, I was just looking to make a one-time transaction and take that money and head over to Pocket Change, which was the arcade, back when arcades were still a thing, and pretty much spend the rest of my day in Pocket Change. Because I had a long day ahead of me, because the way that the bus ran from Waldorf down to Bryan's Road ran one way in the morning, one way in the evening. So I had to wait till the evening bus. And what went from one transaction, well, turned into a lot of transactions. Now, within those transactions, I actually opted for store credit at Babbage's and got myself a Sega Saturn, as well as a couple games. Now, eventually, I got to the point of doing a lot of Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, still trying to only get like one of each. And Estelle's trying to come up in here. What's up, baby? But I was going back and forth, and eventually the mall cop decided to take me to the side told me to come with him. And of course I did, because I wasn't an idiot. Granted, I probably could have outran him, but where was the point in that? Yes, Estelle. Yes, I love you. Yes. You just being a little brat? Yeah, you just being a little brat? Oh, yeah, you being a little brat, huh? But anyway, so I ended up getting banned from the mall for running a business. And the one who turned me in was the sales associate at Babbage's. They went and called security on me, because I guess they got tired of taking the games and couldn't just say, hey, we're not doing this anymore. I know what you're doing. Not cool with it. Not doing it. Couldn't just do that, could we? No. So, I left the store, I left the mall that day with a Sega Genesis, a couple games, as Estelle decides to shake the camera. Oh, yes, I love you. You're a good girl. Yes, you are. But I left with the Sega Genesis, couple games, couple other games, and about $1,100. So, carrying on with the Sega Saturn. I think I said Sega Genesis, but it's Sega Saturn. I had Astal, which I love that game. Bug 2, the 3 games it came with, which was the Virtua Cop, Daytona USA, and I think Virtua Fighter 2 was the other one that they came with. And I had a Baku Animal. Those are my starter games for the Sega Saturn. And I ended up owning about 3 more games before all was said and done. This was back in, of course, 1998. I've owned quite a bit more in my adult years. But eventually, in my utter stupidity, and yes, feel free to make fun of me in the comments for this one. And I don't know why I'm actually admitting this, but I traded off my Sega Saturn. Sold the games, traded off the system. There's Cattail. Yeah, Estelle's looking at me like, why are you saying this? You know you're an idiot. I traded it off for dubbed versions of, by dubbed I mean, taken from CD and put onto cassette, of both the NSYNC and Backstreet Boys debut CDs. One on each side. Yeah. I was a big pop fan back then. I learned that, my thinking was also, if I learned the songs, there's all these girls that are into them, so... Estelle, what are you doing? That is your tail. She's attacking her tail. Quit attacking your tail. Hey. Quit it. That's your tail, silly. And of course, she's shaking the camera every time she basically moves. Okay, calm down. Calm down, baby. I know Daddy was a dumbass. I mean, I was. There's no anything about it. That was just dumb of me. But later in life, I got the Sega Saturn back and started playing more of the games. I believe I have 8 games left on my backlog for the Sega Saturn, with 4 of those being fan translated. And then I'll have completed my run through the Sega Saturn. The one game I never owned that I wanted, and now is just way too much money to even think about, which honestly, Sega Saturn is probably one of the last systems you should try to collect for, because some of the games are just astronomically way too much. Estelle. I love that little cat. But anyway, the games are just astronomical in some places. And one of the ones that I really wish I had gotten was astronomical. I remember having the opportunity to get it and a couple other games at what was that place called? You know, I can't remember what it was called, but there was a store in College Park, Maryland, that also rented out dubs of anime on VHS, which, yes, I know dubs are supposed to be free and all that, but they had a thing going, and that's how I finished off Yu Yu Hakusho back in the day. That was a great-ass anime. But Magic Knight Rayearth was the game that it's not that great of a game. From what I understand, it can be beaten in like 8 hours, and it's a lot of cutscenes. I had it for the Super Famicom. There was one on the Super Famicom. I have one on the Game Boy. Both imports. And there is one, I think, that's on the Game Gear that I don't have. The Game Gear being the only handheld system that I've never owned. Simply because there weren't that many games on it that weren't just Sega Genesis portables. And for that, I'd rather have a Nomad, which I never owned, but my younger brother did. But that's another thing for another time. But yeah. It all started with a trip to the mall. It ended with me being kicked out. And to this day, I don't know why I didn't stop before that point. But, you know, you live and you learn. So, you know, feel free to drop comments and let me know. Why do I always point like to my face when I do it? I'm like supposed to point down. I always point to my face. But drop comments about, you know, your history with the Sega Saturn, or maybe your history with the malls, or if you ever did anything like this where you bought from Funko Land and sold the Babbages or to a pawn shop or something else, use some trickery as a kid or even as an adult. Hell, I know there's quite a few ways to, you know, make a buck in the video game world. Sorry. Was trying to not need to cough, but I needed to cough at that moment. So, yeah. Y'all take care. Next time around, we'll talk about the Game Boy. The only system that my grandmother ever played with one game. You can think what that game is, and I will confirm it next time. Once again, Beyond the Controller remains raw and unedited. As, you know, that's just what happens. It's simple that way, right? It's been Azure Tony. Today, we talked about the fun in gaming and how I got kicked out of a mall for life. Though, honestly, I could probably go back now. If I ever went back to Maryland, I could probably go back now and they wouldn't be any the wiser. But anyway, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'll catch you next time. Arigatou gozaimasu.